Okay, yeah, so you're welcome from me and welcome Subhuti for the second of these talks, these discussions. And yeah, like Stiramanas said, we're going to talk about practice tonight. And there's so much we could say about Subhuti, all the different things he's done, all the different institutions he's built, books he's written, friendships, so many different things that I'm not going to even try and do that. But I just wanted to share one interaction that I've had with Subhuti that's had a really strong effect on me, which was I was on a solitary retreat, and I was a couple of days into the solitary retreat and the water just completely stopped working where I was. So I was in the middle of Wales. There was no water except this kind of dirty stream up the road, and it wasn't far from where Subhuti lived. And I'd organised that I wanted to see Subhuti at the end. I'd asked if I could go and see Subhuti at the end of my solitary, and he agreed, even though I didn't know him particularly well, but he agreed. And I was a couple of days in, no water, and I was just like, this is over, I'm done, I'm giving up. So I text Subhuti a bit dejected, being like, I'm going to go home, can I come and see you? Can I come and see you before I go? And he was like, come and see me. And we'll see what we can do about solitary. So I went and drove to see Subhuti, and he was very clear that I wasn't going to leave him. And it was so lovely. He kind of empathised that it was difficult, but he was like, no, we're going to get you staying on the solitary. So he went into his big shed, got out these big kind of water kegs, got me a water filter, filled them all up with drinking water, and kind of sent me on my way. And I was saying, thank you. And he's like, anything to keep people on retreat. And it just had such a strong effect on me, because I didn't particularly know Subhuti, but it's just so much care and kindness and kind of passion for people to do what we're doing. So I think that memory will always stay with me. So I'm really grateful to have had that and to have stayed on the solitary.
You did.
So today. Sorry. No, okay. I thought you would say something. So today we're going to be looking at practice. So yesterday we looked at vision, kind of the Buddhist vision, and what does that mean for us. And today we're going to be looking at practice. So I thought we'd just jump straight in. And I was wondering, could you tell us what is practice? It's kind of, people use that word a lot now. I think quite often also when people say practice, they mean they're talking about meditation, but actually practice is more than that. So I was wondering if you could just start by telling us what is practice.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you emphasised that misuse of the term practice. Meditation is an aspect of practice, but all practice is not meditation, although meditation is a form of practice. It's very important. Otherwise, we think that our effort is only when we're meditating. So what we mean by practice in Buddhism is everything that we do in order to purify, focus, and elevate consciousness. And beyond that, what we do to see the true nature of things directly. So everything that we do, every aspect of our lives can be used for practice. In other words, you're walking along the road, you try to be mindful of walking. You're having your food, you try to be mindful of eating. And beyond that, you try to be mindful of the whole context of eating, if you like. When you're interacting with other people, you try to be aware of yourself, you try to be aware of them, and so on and so forth. And you try to use difficulties in life, of which there are many, you try to use them to reveal to you the real nature of this existence. So every situation can tell you what life really is. You use death, for instance, as a point of reflection. There's plenty of death. You use success as a point of reflection. Whatever comes to you, you try to use it to bring your mind together, unify your mind, unify your energies, to elevate them so they're more subtle, more alive, and to, as it were, sharpen them so that you can really see what life means, what it is in its depths. A lot more to say, but that'll do as a broad and brief introduction.
Great.
So you can probably, those of you who are have studied Buddhism at all will notice I've talked really about two things: shamatha, which means calmness, quietness, focus, concentration, and vipassana, which means insight. So everything we do can be developing shamatha, everything we do can be developing vipassana. And I should say, referring back to the distinction you've already made, that meditation is an aspect of practice rather than practice being meditation. Everything you do can be developing these two aspects. And if you're not practicing in your everyday life, your meditation will not go very far. Because when you sit to meditate, you're meditating with the mind that you've cultivated, that you developed since you last meditated. It's not that you can sit down to meditate and you just go instantly into a wonderful state. Some people can, I can't. You're starting from where you've got to. So if you're really finding it difficult to meditate, look at the rest of your life. If you're finding it difficult to concentrate your mind, recognize that you're living in a very distracted way, or that there are unresolved issues and tensions in your mind that are going to be with you when you meditate. Unfortunately, contrary to what I believed when I first started meditating, which was that it was a panacea that would just send me soaring beyond everything, even better than marijuana and other substances, it ain't like that. You're dealing with the mind you've been developing in the last 24 hours and indeed in the last so many years.
It's interesting how you're talking. It kind of shows how practice, it's more about you've got your life. You don't just have your practice, it's kind of like every moment.
Your life should be practice. And it should contain not merely this sort of attempt to get to know your own mind and change the current of your mind, but it should contain positive emotion. A positive emotion both in the sense of the fundamental positive emotion, which is metta, maitri, that everybody who's come to meditation knows about, but also it's the corollaries of that, which are karuna, when you meet suffering, mudita, when you meet happiness, and equanimity, when you meet difficult, turbulent life, and shraddha, which we usually translate as faith, not very accurately, when you encounter value, when you encounter something of worth. So those should all be part of your life. That's all part of practice. You're trying to practice, you're trying to cultivate them, and you're trying to prolong them, elongate them into your life.
You mentioned at the beginning, I think you said a list of 3. I think it was purify, unify, elevate. Is that? Could you say more a bit about that as a?
Yeah, my goodness, is that what I said? So what did I say? Purify. Well, of course, purify means trying to get rid of what in Buddhism we call unskillful mental states. That is dark, oppressive, antagonistic states. States defined in Buddhism as greed, hatred, and delusion, the deadly 3. That is intense craving, well, even not very intense craving, but where you're longing for something to fulfill you, something that's not present you want to bring into you, which can, of course, lead to terrible suffering, both for you and for others. Hatred, you're trying to eliminate what you believe is preventing you from being secure and happy. And then ignorance, which is where you ignore what they say, inconvenient truth. So you're trying to purify your mind of these mental states, which they're present for all of us because they're natural outcomes of our natural animal nature. Greed is as it were, the appropriation by the self of the animal instinct of hunger and thirst. Hatred is the appropriation by the ego identity of the animal's instinct of defense and attack, and ignorance of the tactic that animals would engage in when there's something that they can't deal with. You just play dead. What's the word? Play possum. That's what some animals do. They just lie down and pretend they're not there. So that those three tactics are outcomes of the sort of invasion by our more animal instincts of our human self-identity. So you're trying to notice those, become aware of them, not feel bad about them. They're not good, but feeling bad is often itself a negative state. So you're trying to purify your mind of those states. We can say a lot about how you do that, but for the time being, I'll leave you to ask the question. So purify. What else would I say?
If I remember, I think it was unify and elevate.
Unify, so that our energies are so scattered. And when you try to meditate, you notice how your mind is dotting here and there, and how everything that's happened to you during the day is still echoing in you, and unresolved things are going on within you. So you're trying to bring all your energies together so that you have one unified flow of awareness. Even if your thinking is integrated with your emotion. So there's not thinking going on over there, as it very often is. If you're like me and a sort of heady type, the thinking's going on independent of your emotions. So you're trying to unify yourself so that you're a single present with emotion, intellect, deeper psychic forces, all flowing together. Then what was the last one? Refine. Elevate. So what Buddhism teaches us, not only Buddhism, but Buddhism teaches us with very great precision that consciousness can function on different levels. Everybody's got experience of that. You listen to some music that's very beautiful, for instance. I don't necessarily mean anything particularly sophisticated, but music that at the end of in the course of listening to the music, you feel yourself to be in a different state of mind, what we would call a higher state of mind. You could call it a deeper state of mind. It's only a metaphor, but where you notice things more subtly, and you're more permeable. The world comes into you, so that if you're in nature is speaking to you. It's you could say the poetic mood, where the world is alive and you are alive in the world, and where you may experience increasingly elevated states in which you have a sense of joy, a joy that comes from within. The Buddha distinguished between the pleasures of the round, the pleasures that are to do with the fulfillment of desire. So you fulfill a desire and there's pleasure, but that fades once the basis for it is gone. But the pleasures of the path, they sort of augment. You experience that joy, that inner joy, which is independent of circumstances, which can only increase if you pay attention to it. So yes, that's quite a good tertiary. I don't know where I got it from, but it's quite not bad. The script, it just came out, didn't it?
Good. Yeah. And I guess so. These days, there's a lot of stuff online of people trying to kind of find ways to improve themselves and kind of best themselves, and a lot of like science-backed things and stuff like that. How's Buddhist practice different from these things as well? What's distinctive about what Buddhism's offering as opposed to the other things?
Yeah. Well, in principle, at the level of shamatha, as I defined it, it's not that different. Do you see what I mean? I'm a rather sort of traditional sort of fellow, so I've just done it the way I was taught it. But I don't see in principle why other methods should not be effective. If you're going to practice within a tradition, you do the things that the tradition teaches you. You could do it another way, but go with that tradition because there's knowledge about what happens then. So there's nothing in principle different from mindfulness used as a technique for overcoming habitual tendencies and so forth at that level. But what is distinctive about Buddhism is that we try to aim for something more than that. We try to aim for liberation, so that you are not merely adjusting yourself to life. You are trying to, as it were, go beyond life, at least in a certain sense. Go to beyond life to more than life, not to less than life. You're trying to free your mind from the tyranny of the conditioned, because we're slaves to conditions. Our minds are formed by conditions and are shaped by conditions. We can use that strategically, but like sailing, if you're tacking with the wind and so forth. But in the end, you need to go beyond that so that your awareness, your consciousness, is not dependent on anything that is conditioned. And then there's nothing that can touch you. There's nothing that can assail you. You're completely assured, you're completely free. And you can only respond with compassion to others around you. So that's what's distinctive. Everybody does mindfulness these days, although I think the craze has gone a bit. They even in the House of Commons, in the Parliament, have a mindfulness group. My goodness, they could use it. Mindfulness, yes, anyway. It's that common. And I remember we had a hustings once for the mayor, and we got all the local candidates to come. One of them didn't come. That was rather noticeable, the one who actually got in. But we asked them, they were asked a set of questions that people had prepared in advance. And they asked about mindfulness, and every one of them affirmed the importance of mindfulness, which I thought was disturbing. It's become that sort of, what could I say, sort of commonplace.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, if it's real mindfulness, it's a good thing. It's good that people are mindful, but it's not enough. There has to be mindfulness not just of yourself, your moods and so forth. It has to be mindful of reality itself, the true nature of things. So that's the distinctive thing about Buddhism. Yeah, shamatha we have in common with many other traditions, but vipassana, insight, is distinctively Buddhist.
Great. So that kind of looks at it from a Buddhist perspective. I'm kind of interested in now zooming into, we are practicing within Triratna, and we've got a system of practice in Triratna that we've been given.
Yes.
Maybe you could say a bit about that particular system of practice.
Well, maybe I can say something about the principle of system of practice, if you see what I mean. It's very difficult actually to make progress. I've been trying for 55 years and I'm still trying. It's not that easy. And according to Buddhist tradition, it takes lifetimes. So what the modern habit is, of course, what we could call supermarket spirituality. So you go and you pick what suits you, what you like. That's a problem because you are biased, if you see what I mean. You're not going to pick something that is actually going to confront you. It's going to challenge you. So you're going to sort of, you're going to pick what is not uncomfortable. And actually, you need to experience a bit of discomfort because you've got to go beyond your present compromise with reality. The compromise with reality which identifies you as this and that, and not that, and not that, and that excludes all that. You've got to be confronted by that because you've got to go beyond it. So you need a system of spiritual discipline. Sorry, I have to use that word. You need a system of spiritual discipline because that will enable you to confront yourself and overcome yourself. Without that, it's very difficult, I think, to make progress. The Buddha did it on his own. He was the Buddha. He's obviously an exceptional individual when he came into this life. I am able to say without any hesitation, I am not an exceptional individual. I'm an ordinary human being. And I needed the help of a system. I needed a teacher, somebody who could form a system of practice. And you could say, well, another system of practice might be just as good. I think ours is the best, actually. Because the best one is the one you're engaged with, you could even say. Yes, what our teacher, Sanghadharin, has done is come into the modern world. It's not just the Western world, because the Western now, in a way, the kind of basis of the Western, of what started in the West has now become universal. I see it in India, I've seen it everywhere. The modern scientific outlook, the idea, democratic idea, and so on. All of that is now ubiquitous. So Sanghadharin is the first person really to very consciously try to bring Buddhism into relationship with the modern situation. I'm sure others have done it as well, but probably the first. Many have acknowledged that. He was the first one really not to just take an Eastern tradition and sort of bring it in, so you become half a Tibetan as well as an Englishman or whatever, and just say, okay, we're here. I remember I went to see him shortly after I'd been learning meditation with him in central London, near Seven Dials, Trafalgar Square, in 1969. Yeah, there was a time that far back. And I'd been learning for a bit, so I went to see him and said, okay, I really think this is what I need to be into. I suppose I've got to go to the West. I'd go to the East. Where would you recommend I go? He said, no, it's all here. And he made it very clear that you didn't have to stop being whatever your culture was, that you could practice the Dhamma here and now. And so he's formulated in a very broad way a system of discipline, a way in which you can work on yourself that is progressive. Because as you engage with the spiritual life, new factors need to be addressed. So the system of spiritual discipline, the system of meditation that he formed for us, which actually goes throughout all your experience, is that first of all you need to integrate yourself. Because if you're not integrated, how can you really focus? How can you be disciplined? How can you go forward? But it's not enough just to be able to focus. You've got to be emotionally positive. Otherwise, when you start to address the real nature of things, it can be overwhelming and depressing. When you realize that actually impermanence is the nature of everything, that can really be pretty demoralizing. What's the point? It's all going to end in death. And if it doesn't end in death, there's destruction coming before that. That happens to a lot of people. They do have a glimpse of the way things are, which just horrifies and depresses. So if you're going to really confront reality, you need to have a lot of emotional positivity, a lot of emotional energy. So that's the second necessity. But then, on the basis of that focus and of that, or integration, the integration of own psychic energies and the development of positive emotion and positive energy, you could say, you're able to investigate reality. You're able to see it is impermanent. There really is nothing more than what appears. There's no God somewhere outside there, pulling the strings of life. Thank goodness. But it's all just a flow of appearance. There's no underlying substance to it. And there's no underlying substance to you. You are not a fixed reality. That can be a pretty overwhelming and terrifying thought, because we all want to be something. The great question, who am I? Well, you are merely a flow of conditioned processes. So you need to have that high positivity so that you can gain that degree of insight. But insight itself, a recognition of what life is not, or rather what life really is, which is not permanent, not substantial, and conditioned existence cannot provide you with lasting happiness. It can present you moments of happiness, but it cannot provide you with abiding happiness, by definition, because it changes. So you see all that, and that breaks you a little free from your attachment to conditioned existence, but something new comes into existence. And this is what Sanghadharin called the stage of rebirth. There's a new you, a you that is not fixed, that is happy with the flow of things, and that is at ease with the constant change and flow, is ease with death, and has no barriers to life, especially life as experienced in others. So the fourth stage is the stage of rebirth. There's a little bit more to it than that, because at every stage you're making an effort. You're making an effort to focus your mind through mindfulness of breathing. You're making an effort to develop positive emotion through Maitri Bhavana or Metta Bhavana. You're making an effort to see through the veil of illusion through insight practices. And you're making an effort to connect with the new you through the visualization of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Who are you? You as you will be. But all that effort can become too much effort and can strain you and even lead to a sort of pride. Look what I've done. I've done the whole mindfulness of breathing without a moment's distraction. And of course you've gone straight. It's gone straight to your ego identity. I'm a really good meditator. As soon as you think you're a good meditator, you're a bad one, to coin a phrase. So you need to be able just to sit without anything going on. He only gave us a very short period of that. I think we should have longer of just sitting. But you should be able to just sit with your mind completely relaxed, completely present, and just with a sort of flow of creative energy from within you. So every practice is balanced or accompanied by a period of no practice. What Sanghadharin used to say was, when you do this just sitting practice, don't make an effort. No, don't make an effort. Don't try not to make an effort. Just sit. And that, of course, is what you're ultimately aiming at. But it means that your efforts are not too forcible and willful. So this is the system of practice that our teacher has given us. There are other systems of practice. You can go through the whole Lamrim Chenmo of Tsongkhapa, which is extremely complicated, and so on. You can go to Vipassana classes or whatever. But any decent Buddhist group, or any group, will provide you with a system which you put yourself into and have confidence in, and that will lead you forward. It's not saying it's the only one, or written in the stars or something like that, but it's the one you've come across, the one that seems to work, and that the teacher you have confidence in has given you.
Yeah, I think you laid out the path really well for us there.
Well, I was following a great master.
Yeah. But I wonder whether these days it's obviously when you first came along, you're 1969. It was either I go to the East or I practice here.
Yeah.
I guess people these days, they have access to so much more, don't they? There's all of this stuff online.
Yeah.
And also you were saying about how when we have to do things that challenge us.
Yeah.
But I guess when people are looking for stuff, they wouldn't feel like, oh, I'm avoiding things.
No,
they'll be drawn.
Yeah.
They'll be drawn to things.
Yeah.
So why? You've kind of explained, but I want to explore a bit more. Why should people not just take the bits from everywhere, take the good bits from everything?
Well, I think I have explained, frankly, but to reiterate the point that your practice must lead you beyond yourself, and the great danger is that is in just taking what immediately pleases you. What it's pleasing is your present ego compromise. If you see what I mean, we arrive at a compromise understanding of who we are, which we think is the real me. And so then you take what you think supports that. That's the great danger. So that I would say is the first point. And I think that another factor is that we live in a consumer society where the whole emphasis is on choice, choosing what you want. I remember the first time I walked into a New York bagel shop. I'm still recovering from the shock. Because do you want... And I'm not going to try the American accent. I'll only do it very badly. But there's this whole long list of things you can choose. And I said, just give me a bagel. But you're sort of expected to make choices, and you're sort of taught that you should make a choice. So choice seems to be the dominant leitmotif of modern life. And of course choice goes with dissatisfaction, because when it doesn't work you just go to a new one. Frankly, we get a lot of that here. People are tasting, fair enough, that's fair enough, but at some point you've got to get out of the supermarket and do the cooking. That was a good one. You've actually got to get on with it. But there's another aspect to it. It's very, very difficult to practice on your own. And if you're mixing and matching, you're basically, a Sangha of one. And you're dipping into this community, that community, and there's no continuity of connection. Of course, that's a bit of an exaggeration. It's never quite that bleak, but often it is something of that. What you need is a Sangha. But this passes into tomorrow's topic. We better not go there, otherwise Thomas will have nothing to say. But you need a community of friends, because they will not hold you to it in a nasty way, but just because their presence will challenge you to keep going. But that is another story.
So you kind of said there are lots of systems of they'll kind of all give you, well, I don't know all of them, but you said many of them. But if you were going to try and convince someone that actually Triratna was the one to choose, as opposed to the other ones,
well, I wouldn't try.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think you can do that, really. All I can say, we have a free meditation class on Monday night. Come and try it. Suck it and see, as they say. I don't think I would ever try to persuade. I wouldn't know how to do it, if you see what I mean. I might, in communication with somebody, find out where they were at and sort of suggest, well, you might like to talk to this person, or you might go to that class, maybe sort of help them to engage. But there's a well-known metaphor of the Buddhas, simile of the Buddhas. He talks about the Dhamma being like the mighty ocean. There are many, many different aspects of this, but one of them is that the mighty ocean slopes down gradually, so that when you go to the seaside, you're not suddenly in the depths. Depends where you are, of course, but we're let to have a nice slow slope. So you gradually go up to your ankles, up to your knees, and so on. So that I just encourage somebody to, take another step. And I'd never try to stop somebody or persuade them, oh, don't go there, don't go there. Because it might even be better they did, I don't know. It might be better they didn't come here. Yes, I would just encourage people to engage with what we've got, and to feel free to engage with it more, or free to go. We make very clear that anybody coming along, I don't know this is so much emphasised anymore, because we don't call ourselves the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. But when I came along, the movement was called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. It couldn't be called Western Buddhist Order when we had a third of our order in India. And I've certainly found in Singapore, people thought they couldn't engage with us because we were a Western Buddhist Order. So we changed the name. but they're friends of the Western Buddhist order. I think it's a shame we've lost that. Because what Bhante would emphasize, Sangharakshita, our teacher, would emphasize is everybody coming along is a friend. And if you want to take another step, you can become a mitra, which actually means friend too, and so on. So that by coming along and entering into connection with us, you're a friend. But, friends are free to come and go. So it's a very important principle of ours. We never sort of sell ourselves. Well, probably we do, perhaps we shouldn't. But at least we sort of let people know what there is more. And if you find yourself attracted, there's always something more we can offer you. If you find yourself not liking something, talk to somebody. Because we're not perfect. And we do make mistakes, and we don't cover everything. But if you talk to somebody, they may be able to help you to find something in what we do that will apply to you. So we're never going to be all things to all human beings at any stage, but we can expand our responses to include more and more people, as we've tried to do. But I think one of the distinctive things about Triratna, why I think it would be, it is a good community to engage with, is because Sangharakshita has sort of started again. So, the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago a very clear, very essential guide to the path. Then down the centuries, 2,500 years, have I got that right? Yeah, 2,500 years, over a huge geographical spread. Buddhism developed in many, many different cultures, and it developed progressively. So even in India, over the 1,000 years, 1,000 to 1,200 years, India developed, Buddhism developed in India. It developed, it changed, because those who were practicing had new needs, and because the culture changed around them, and they had to respond to what the culture what's going on in the culture. They had to respond to challenges from outside. They had to respond to opportunities outside. So you get a wide divergence of approaches in the Buddhist tradition, huge range of different approaches. Sometimes it's very difficult to see what they have in common. What they have in common, of course, is the Buddha and enlightenment. So what are we to do? Are we to elect one of those streams of tradition and say, this is the one we're going to follow? Are we going to do a mix and match and sort of make it up for ourselves? Or are we going to sort of re-envision Buddhism or reframe Buddhism? In other words, to take the Buddha's enlightenment, the Buddha's essential teaching, and the great teachers of all traditions, and say, what do they mean for us now? How do we apply them right now? But without feeling, we're Tibetan Buddhists, we're Japanese Buddhists, we're Theravada or whatever. We're just Buddhists practicing in our own cultures, and we have centres in 50 or 60 different countries now, or at least activities in 50 or 60 different countries. In each one there'll be a slightly different flavour, and because the practice of Buddhism looks different in different situations. So I go to India twice a year for about 3 or 4 months every year. And in India it looks very different because we're mainly responding to people from at the bottom of the caste system. They have particular needs and a particular experience. So our approach has to take that into account, or their approach has to take that into account, if you see what I mean. It's still recognisably the same, because at the bottom of them all is this a genius, Sangharakshita's recognition of the essential nature of the Dharma. Once you've seen the principles of the Dharma, you can apply them anywhere. That's what we are very fortunate to have been taught, what the principles of the Dharma are, rather than its specific manifestations. We can learn from those manifestations, but it's the principles that matter.
I think this leads me on to one of the questions that I've had people ask me quite a lot. That is kind of Sangharakshita's one man, and he's created our system of practice, whereas other traditions, they've emerged over hundreds of years or so. So who is Sangharakshita to choose to create a system of practice?
Well, actually, if you look at any of those traditions, you'll usually find there are individuals behind them. You know, I just mentioned Tsongkhapa. The Gelugpa tradition, which is the dominant Tibetan Buddhist tradition, was essentially founded by one man, Tsongkhapa. The Kagyu tradition was founded by Milarepa, and then his successors, Gampopa and so on. So every tradition has its founder. And you'll find that with Shinran, with Jodo Shinshu, even Theravada Buddhism, which claims to be the original authentic Buddhism, was essentially a reinvention by Buddhaghosa in the early centuries. So you will find that every tradition has somewhere in it a founder or a sequence of founders who refound. Because what happens is, Buddhism was founded by the Buddha. He taught, that did wonderfully for 300 or 400 years, but at a certain point, either the tradition became dried out, it began to become corrupt, because that happens to all human institutions and traditions, inevitably happens, it'll happen to us one day, you'll have to reform it. But I hope not for 3 lifetimes yet. So at some point somebody says, wait a minute, I don't think this is what the Buddha really taught. I think when I read the scriptures, when I sort of feel a connection with the Buddha, he didn't mean this. Circumstances have changed. What he meant is this. And that they will re-express, sometimes not very self-consciously, if you see what I mean. They'll just think that is what the Buddha taught, or they'll say, no, we need to rethink. And so there's a sort of relaunching. It's very interesting that the Buddha, in a number of suttas, that is the discourses that preserve his words, fairly faithfully, not, it wasn't a tape recording, but the Buddha in several places says that after a certain period of time, the Sangha will decay. Especially, essentially when it comes to wealth, greatness of numbers and power. We're not nearly there yet, but so I think he put it at a 2,500 year period, which is a little alarming. But what Sangharakshita says, well, yes, it will decay unless it is renewed. So it's as if the water runs out, but a new figure comes who's inspired by the Buddha and re-expresses the Buddha's essential teaching. So that process has happened again and again as both corruption sets in on the institutional level, or times change and issues are not being dealt with. So, for instance, in the early years, about the 500 years after the Buddha's death, it was felt that something essential about the Buddha's message had been lost, which was its other regarding dimension. So there then arose what is called the Mahayana and the Bodhisattva ideal as a sort of corrective to the one-sided interpretation that had gradually grown. The spiritual energy can run out, although it may have an alternative stream, and then it needs to be sort of reinvigorated. So from my point of view, and I think this would be not hard to validate, Sangharakshita is one of those figures who's come along and said, wait a minute, what we've inherited is a lot of it's corrupt, and it is. A lot of it is corrupt. There's no doubt. I won't tell you any stories, but there are plenty of stories, and some of them are pretty alarming. It's not that it's totally corrupt. There is life and energy in it. And it's also not related to the modern situation, where we have a much greater historical sense, Indian tradition generally did not have a strong historical sense. They didn't have a sense of the tradition developing. So later developments were always fathered on the Buddha himself. We've got the fine traditions of historical scholarship, of as it were scientific, evidence-based scholarship. We've got much higher development of the rational mind, maybe too much, arguably. We've got a much greater, in many places anyway, much greater social freedom to do something different, to live differently, and so forth. So times have changed. We no longer live in the agrarian economies in which Buddhism developed. Democracy unknown in the Far East, in the East rather, although arguably it was there in the very early tribal societies from which the Buddha himself came, from the Terai, the southern Nepal. So modern democratic ideas completely foreign. It's Dr. Ambedkar who really spotted the relationship between the Dhamma and a democratic society. So there are new issues which need the Dhamma expressing in relation to. As Sangharakshita has distinctively, these days there are more people who are trying to do the same thing, often coming from traditional background. But he's an outstanding figure in that respect.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, kind of we're not in that dissimilar position to the people who are 1, 2, 3 generations after the people like Shinran Milarepa, in terms of looking back at the teacher.
Yes, I think that's true. What Bhante said himself was he's just doing what has been done again and again. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's not the last word. Maybe in a couple of generations somebody greater than him will arise within the order and sort of refresh on the basis of what he did. And that's perfectly possible. In a way, every time any of us teach, we're expanding the range of what Bhante taught. We're going on the basis of what he taught, the principles he adumbrated for us, and we're taking them further.
I think this is coming onto an area that I also wanted to explore, which is kind of the balance between kind of progressivism and conservatism in terms of a system, because obviously we've now got a system, but how fixed is it? How fluid is it? How much can it develop? How much can it not?
Well, it cannot but develop, insofar as, for instance, I'm not Sangharakshita. Not just in a sense that I'm not as great a man as him, but in a sense I'm a different man to him, a different character. So when I talk about the Dhamma, I'm going to talk about it in a different way. And that may improve, or rather extend what he said. It may do something else, but we won't go to that. So in a certain sense, evolution is inevitable and necessary. But it must be a faithful evolution. Otherwise we lose connection with each other, and we lose the spiritual vitality that came through Sangharakshita. It wasn't just a question of teaching. I knew the man, I knew him very well, and I worked for him. I was his secretary for a number of years, and he was a very remarkable man indeed. And there was, I can tell you this, it's up to you whether you take it or not. I'm not expecting you to, but I'm just telling you my experience, that he was a man who clearly was in contact with another dimension. He was actually very commonsensical and very clear, and didn't sort of try to get you to believe in him in that sort of way, but I saw him up close. He was in contact with something, and that was a sort of current, a current of energy that still runs through our movement. I hope that some of you coming here will have experienced that. So you want to be true to that current of spiritual energy, and to maintain it. You also want to be in communion with others who are disciples of Sangharakshita and disciples of disciples and so forth. And it's very difficult to have that sort of communion with people who are practicing in a very different way, with a very different understanding. It's not that they're necessarily doing something different to you, but it's more difficult to share. Like I can talk about metta bhavana and mindfulness of breathing, just to put it very simply, and those of you who've done those practices know what I'm talking about. So we've got a framework and an alphabet, a language which we can share that promotes our mutual understanding. And the further we get from sharing that, the more difficult it is for us to easily commune. It's not saying you can't. I've had very, very deep communication with Buddhists from other backgrounds, and with non-Buddhists from other backgrounds. Non-Buddhists. But I know pretty much with any order member, there's a common vocabulary that we have, a vocabulary of practice, of ritual, of teachings, an ample armoury of teachings which we all share, which makes it much easier for us to come into closer communion. So I think one's duty as a member of this particular community is to preserve the continuity of that. So it's continuity without stasis. Do you see what I mean? It can't be frozen. I was one of those who started this centre, and the sort of atmosphere, it's changed hugely. Not that's unrelated to that, but it's developed from what we started with. A long way. And even people's capacity to communicate the Dhamma has in many ways greatly improved and much more subtle, and more people with deeper experience. It was just Sangha Action, a bunch of hippies. David Mitchell wasn't a hippie, of course. He never inhaled. So it must develop. Times have changed. People coming in. Those days, nobody knew anything about Buddhism. Now everybody studied in school. Literally, I never knew a thing about Buddhism, really, until a few years before, 2 or 3 years before I came in contact with the Dhamma here. I sort of knew of Buddhism. Funny story, my father was a naval officer, and he came back after a long cruise, 18 months in those days, and he told stories of his admiral who had gone into a Burmese monastery to separate body and mind. I was absolutely intrigued. Anyway, he's quite a famous figure, Admiral Shattuck. But that was my first encounter with Buddhism. So I've been trying to separate body and mind.
Yeah, so you're kind of saying that the evolution is going to naturally happen. It can't help but happen.
Yeah.
But we also need to make sure we're preserving something as well.
And that we're remaining in communion. So that we value our communion and we put effort into maintaining it. So that we have a common framework. And that you don't unnecessarily innovate. And if you do innovate, you do it in relation to others. You consult, you discuss, you experiment. Well, as Sanghadharin said, experimentation is one of the pillars of Triratna. So that you, and what he meant was a kind of scientific experimentation. You try it out. You see what the result is. You run it up the flagpole and see who salutes it. You see what effect it has, and so on. But yes, it's a delicate balance to strike. You want to be faithful to the original current of spiritual energy and the original principles and even the original practice, but at the same time allowing that to evolve in a mindful way that is related across the community. And by and large, that's true. I go to Mexico every year, poor me, and it's recognisably the same Triratna, although it's a little livelier. And food seems to be a very important part of every programme. And the food, of course, is... India, it's recognisably the same. But at the same time, it's Indian culture, culturally Indian. And that should be true everywhere, north and south of England. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to a slightly different area now. So you've been practicing, so we're looking at practice. You've been practicing in Triratna for how long? How long now?
55 years.
55 years.
I think
So how, when you're practicing in one tradition with the same practices,
Yeah.
kind of in the same system with the same people
Yeah.
for that long,
Yeah.
how do you stay inspired? If you're doing the same practices again and again and again, how do you stay interested in it? How do you stay inspired with those practices?
Well, of course, those practices aren't just having a single effect. It's not that you do the mindfulness breathing one day and it has a certain effect, and then you do it, consistently over 10 years or something, and you're doing exactly the same thing. You are doing the same thing by focusing on your breath, but the experience is very different. So that the form, the form develops the content. So the renewed inspiration and so forth comes from the development that takes place within it. Do you see what I mean? So that, I've become thoroughly bored at times with practices and so forth, but and sometimes usually that's to do with the way I'm doing it, rather formulaic, without really going deep enough. So you have to dig deeper. And I think that's what happens. The form gives you, means you have to dig deeper. Because, sometimes people in the order, we take on a practice and a visualization practice at ordination. And sometimes people will come after a year of doing the practice they were given, and say, that practice isn't working. Can you give me another one? You can imagine what I say. Go back and do it again. And don't change it until it's working. Because that just becomes restlessness. So it's like any achievement, you need to keep at it. Like if you go to art college, I don't know whether they still do this, but you draw and you draw and you draw and you draw. And you draw until the point comes when the drawing comes to life, sort of independent of you. No art is achieved without that sort of effort. Scales. Yeah, you have to play the scales again and again. I remember hearing Andrashif talking about his own playing, and he said every day he played from Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, because that exercises every chord, every key, and every mode, as it were. So you go back, you just do it every day, and he's one of the top players in the world. Every day he does his C major prelude and so forth. So all achievement, human achievement, I think requires discipline. And discipline it's a dirty word nowadays, but after all, what its origin is in learning. Every morning in my Latin classes, the master would come in and he would say, salve discipuli. Just to do with learning. So you apply yourself with in a discipline, because the discipline takes you deeper. Some people are able to sort of wander over a broad landscape and find their way to something deeper if they have some sort of genius. But most of us are not geniuses, and it's that consistent application to a discipline done with life, kept alive, that makes one grow. So I can't say I've ever felt, no, that would be a lie. There are times when I've been bored and wondered if I'm doing the right practices and so forth, but in the end I know that's to do with me. There's nothing wrong with the practices, and that if you just keep doing them and digging deeper, and of course talking to those who've got greater experience than you, talking to people with the same experience as you, you can enliven those practices. You always give the analogy in India that if you want to get water out of a well, you don't go to 10 wells and drop your bucket 10% of each. if you see what I mean. You have to drop it all the way to the bottom. Not that any of them have ever done that, because they're all out of the villages now, but yeah.
We need to start wrapping up. So I just wanted to end. It's not a wholly fair question to kind of answer in a very short amount of time, but you've been someone that's spent your life practicing Buddhism.
Yeah.
That's the path that you chose. You kind of chose Buddhism as your ideal. You've chosen it as your path of practice. I wonder if you could just say a little something about what effect has that had, having practiced Buddhism for that long and really committed to it as fully as you have. What effect does that have? Because lots of us won't have been practicing anywhere near that time. So to kind of give people a glimpse of actually what is it like when you've been practicing.
Well, I suppose that my main experience is I just feel happy. If you see what I mean, I'm not bothered too much. I have my moments, but I just don't feel that bothered. And I feel mostly happy. Not just happy, sort of at least some joyousness. And I find myself able to communicate much better. I was telling somebody this morning, I was an extremely shy young man, very confident in my ability to do things, but very socially unconfident. Well, I'm not like that anymore. Some people would say it'd be better if I was a bit like that. But I've sort of, in a just quite ordinary experience, I feel much more able to connect with people and to enjoy people. And not to be self-conscious. I was terribly self-conscious. What would people think of me, etc., etc. I can't say I'm completely free from that. But so for instance, doing something like this, people always ask me, how do you feel before? I don't know what they're asking me. I just feel normal. I've done it so often. It's just the way it is. And I don't think it's a very great achievement when you've been giving talks for 50 years. If you still feel nervous, there's something wrong with you. I feel keyed up. You have to gather your energies. I definitely notice I'm happier and that I'm more at ease with people. I don't have any serious conflicts, even unserious conflicts. I feel an ease in life. The Dhamma seems much more plain to me. I don't have to struggle to understand it. Of course, I need to understand it more deeply, but it seems to sort of be more open to me. Now, you might say, well, you're 78 and you should be a bit wiser, but I think it's not just a result of the years. There's something of that. But I'm really enjoying old age. I can recommend it because it's all over. All the struggle is over. You don't have to reprove yourself or anything like that. It's great. And people are a little bit respectful. Somebody actually got up and offered me a seat on the tube the other day. It was wonderful. But I'd say that the outcome of my practice is that I feel happier, more confident, and at ease. Yeah.
I think you've really managed to share some of that with us today as well, with your exploration. So really, thank you for coming and doing this second session with us. And we'll carry on tomorrow looking at community. So let's show Subhuti our appreciation for being here.